Hello Sydney here, and welcome to the Drunken Ork. Now recently myself and fellow odd boy Clint, off of the Essex Boys, were asked to join the Warbosses of the Apocalypse over on the 40k Ork Community Discord and Facebook. As a sort of initiation challenge, we took part in a build-off, which was with 5 of the Ork Warbosses, ourselves included, and the challenge was to take a Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy and turn it into anything but a Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy. Now this was a fantastic idea. I have a Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy built. I do not want another GW Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy. I'd like to make something a little bit different. Same with all the buggies. So to take a buggy kit and turn it to something else, yeah, I'm well up for that. Now this was in March, and a video for the Warbosses of the Apocalypse challenge actually premiered around the start of April. So you might have actually already seen that on the YouTube channel. But just in case you hadn't, I'm going to show you my video now on my channel, and should you wish to see all the other Warbosses videos, and I very much recommend that you do, I'd get yourself along to the Warbosses of the Apocalypse channel and have a look there. Links will be, of course, as always, in the description below. Your Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy. A very popular buggy, very meta. But it wasn't back in 8th, it was rubbish. And what made it even worse, it was mono build. Or at least very difficult to modify into something else. Or is it? Surely any Ork player knows how to modify a kit. But that's not a very popular opinion. Well, I'm not going to have 3 identical buggies in my list. So let's have a crack at it. But what are you going to turn this Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy into, I hear you cry? Well, I'm going to keep it as a buggy for starters. I'm going to turn it into a custom booster blaster. But how am I going to do that? Well, if we have a look at the custom booster blaster, there's a few key components. Firstly, it needs a massive rivet cannon. Now this might be a rivet cannon, or it might end up just being some kind of big dagger weapon. It also needs a spiked ram. It needs burner exhausts to chuck out those 4d6 burner hits. And it's got dualies at the back. That's 2 sets of tyres just at the back. Needs a massive engine. Yes, a massive engine. Preferably exposed. And it needs a grot hanging off it at some point with a little bitty grot blaster. Okay, so I've got a list of the key components. It's now time for this git to hit the bits. So here's some pre-sorted bits. Got some more here, which would be canny for the end of a burner exhaust. Some big shooters. Oh, there's some more burnery, meltery things. Not too big. Scorchers for the exhaust, maybe. Lots and lots of tyres. Try and fit that into the Rukkatrukk. I mean, these are old rhinos. These are 1980s rhino pieces. Bits of armour plate. These have got Aquillas on them, but an Aquila is just a perfect opportunity to make an Orquilla. Grot with a pistol. Jaw plate, maybe a mudguard. Yeah, I think I'll be able to put something together with this, as well as, of course, plastic card. So I started off by gluing part of the Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy together. I wanted to see if I could get that truck engine block in. As you can see here, I couldn't. So I had to cut the model in half. Now sometimes, especially with a new model, a model that's not even fully built, if I'm going to cut it in half, my bumhole twitches like a rabbit's nose. But it's best just to get on with it. So after chopping off the front of the truck and the back part of the truck engine, I was able to slot the engine block in place and then patch up the gap with some 2mm plastic card. I also added a couple of rivets from Meng. And with the occasional rivet, I don't bother popping it on, I just drill a hole where the rivet has fallen out. For a bit of extra protection, I'd also added an armour plate to the exposed part of the engine block. This was just some small bits of plastic eye bar and a bit of corrugated plastic card. Meng rivets were added later. I wanted to put dualies on the back of this, and I had a spare pair of tyres off the Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy, but when I put 2 sets on the back, they just stuck out too far. It was important for us to be able to fit this buggy on the buggy base, so I thought, well, if I want to squeeze those in, I could chop down the axles, but then they wouldn't actually fit into the vehicle because of the irregular shape of the chassis underneath. So I thought if I raise the suspension, have the back end higher up, I can close the wheels in without any real problem. So to that end, I took a battle cannon off an old Lehman Russ model. I thought the centre of that cannon there, if I cut that away, I'll be able to use that as the centre of the axle, like this. This can then be mounted underneath the chassis to raise the whole thing up and allow the dually wheels to sit snugly under it without hanging off the base. So I was intrigued to see underneath of the Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy. Near the back, you've got the exhausts, you've got an inspection hatch with a little nice glyph on it and an armour plate and some rivets. And in the central part to the front, there's fucking nothing. Inconsistencies. Once I'd got the wheels on and the engine in, it was time to start on the back. Now the Rukkatrukk is a flatbed, but I didn't want a flatbed. I wanted something with an enclosed compartment at the back. So I grabbed a Robo gear tank I'd picked up from Soldark. I'd already cut this up quite a bit, and the bit that was left fit quite nicely there. A couple of bits of plastic cord just to hold it at the right height and increase its structural integrity. Then I started to box the back in with more bits of plastic cord. I attached the original Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy door on the driver's side because it's lovely and has a nice little glyph on it. But the door on the left, where the large squig launcher normally goes, I decided to leave off and cut a bit of plastic cord, roughed up the top, covered it in Meng rivets and stuck a big glyph on it. You can also see I've used Deft Red jaw plates as rear mudguards. There's a thin piece of 1/2 mm plastic cord bent round the inside of that as well, just to fill it out around where the teeth are. From the back, there's still some gaps need filling, but you can see the mudguards and the rear suspension. Those exhausts as well really do have to go. Started sticking some exhausts on. These are from the Wasbomb Blaster Jet. I really wanted to give this, because of the flame weapons it has, a lot of exhausts and tubes running all around it. So on the passenger side, they were stuck over the back, and on the driver's side, I stuck them going from the engine block into the back. So the idea is they run from the engine block down the driver's side into the back compartment, through the back compartment and back out the passenger side. Also stuck a large barrel on the driver's side with Orky glyph. Now because the other side was a bit blank, I decided to make a little jerry can holder. This was just a railing off the Genestealer cult vehicle, the Goliath, which I snipped down and stuck on a small section of plastic card with a couple of the jerry cans from the Deathkiller War Trike slid inside. Add a couple of Meng rivets, rough up the edges, and glue it into place. I wanted this buggy to have the feel of a recon vehicle, and these jerry cans sort of give that the right sort of feel. Then took part of the exhaust system from the truck, snipped off the front pipe just so it would fit, and glued that, connecting the engine block to the barrel on the passenger side. Next, headlights. These were taken from the Baneblade kit. I decided, as they look a lot like eyeballs, that I'd rather humorously add some eyelids. These were done with plastic card and cut to express anger through vehicular personality. I applied them in front of the armour plate to really set off that big grill of a mouth. However, after further contemplation, larger eyebrows were added. At this point, I was just running around adding little bits and bobs without any real rhyme or reason. The gear stick was replaced with a skull stick, and the driver's arm hanging out of the vehicle was given a bundle of dynamite on a stick. And for the rivet cannon, I planned on using this from Zinj Industries. What I love about this is that wheel with the arm on, as the wheel rotates, it drives a bolt on the lower cannon back and forth, and there's another arm on the other side which operates the bolt for the top cannon. It's proper steampunk. Now I'd added a bit of eye-bar beneath it to have it mounted on the front of the turret, but I decided not to do that because it looked rubbish. Because instead of sitting in a turret, the Ork who was manning this would have his own firing chair. This is the back of the driver from the truck kit. Now I had to block up the back of his chair, so again, a little bit of plastic card, some eye-bar, and I can also see here, I took the 3 exhausts off the back of the Warbosses Mega Armour, and I've snipped those apart, and I got them ready pinned to put into place. I need a lot of exhausts for this. There's a truck driver from the front. The arms came off one of the battle wagon gunners. The shoulders were shaved at an angle, so instead of the hands being together, they were further apart, and the wrists were cut with the hands reattached at 90 degrees. As if riding a motorbike. As you can see on the main gun, I've added a firing shield, and I took an Ork shoulder pad and cut it in half to make a couple of hand guards for the gunner. You can also see the offcut from the truck exhaust has been repurposed, and I've stuck it to the bit of white plastic card on the left hand side of the engine. Waste not, want not. I added a spotlight to the roll cage on the passenger side, and I also started adding some exhausts. That meltery looking exhaust pipe is half of a dune crawler weapon, although I have no idea what it's called. And look, the gunner's got a head. commando style. And the horns from the battle wagon kit were cut to fit and put on the front. The booster blaster has those two big tusks, and it really sets off that face as being a bit more orky. And as well as a couple of glyphs glued on, I took a ram off a 1980s Rhino kit and stuck that in the front as well. After some thought, I bored a couple of holes into the side of the engine block and put the exhausts from the truck in too. I was going to leave these off because I thought it might be a little bit too much going on, but then I thought, bollocks, I'm doing it anyway. A sledgehammer was added to the back, because it's nice to have a odd bit of equipment stuck on a buggy that's going to be out and about, getting things done. And I started adding more exhausts. Mostly using the piping from the Wasbomb kit with various melter or flamer weapon heads on the end, or just mini exhausts I had lying around from Def Dread kits, and of course that mega armoured Warboss. I cut the back fuel canister off a Def Dread Scorcher, cut it in half, bored it out, and there you go, a cup holder. To make the cup, I had a brush where all the bristles had fallen out, but I'd kept a hold of the handle because you never know. And by cutting off the end of that, I had a nice tapered shape. Found the lid in the Wasbomb blaster kit, no idea what it was for, never used them, got a few of them, and then a bit of plastic tubing as a straw, to give the gunner some refreshments when he sat up on the back. The gaps around the back were filled with small pieces of plastic card in a kind of mismatched armour plating fashion, and extra exhausts also help do that. The two blue bars at the back are to support the gunner seat. If you think they look a little bit wonky here, they are, so don't worry about it. I'm certainly not. Here you can see a couple of small pieces of plastic card which are applied to keep the sledgehammer in place, and a couple of orky sleeping bags just made from hessian, cut into strips, rolled up and then glued in place. I decided I want that blue model covered up in its entirety, so I cut some thin strips of plastic card to make an edge, and then cut some checkerboard plastic card to go around the turret. That's just a rough sketch of what I wanted to cut out. Once that was in place, then Meng bolts were added. Took a 25mm base, which seemed to sit nicely over the turret, bored out the centre, and then stuck some more Meng bolts all the way around it. That then covered that up a treat. The spade was also attached to the front wheel arch, just as an extra tool. One thing I thought I was missing was a pair of fluffy dice. So I cut a couple of cubes off a piece of square plastic rod, drilled holes through them, and with a bit of thread, tied them up. Once they were wrapped around the roll cage a bit, a little drop of thin super glue just to hold them in place. And that was basically it. Using the standard body from the Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy driver, I did replace his head with that from the Deathkiller Wartrike. I used a grot with a grot blaster from the standard box of grots. I did add the crankshaft from the truck and a bundle of rope made from leftover rope I had from Mount Crushmore. And because the driver of the Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy is barefooted and his feet are welded to the pedals, I decided no non-snakebite would be going around without boots, so I made a pair of boots by chopping the boots off a knob and then hollowing them out, tying some rope around them and attaching them to the side of the buggy. So my driver does have shoes, he just hasn't bothered putting them on yet. Well, that's the buggy built, but next I had to paint it. First of all, I primed it black with High Coat matte black primer, the odd boy's choice. Then painted it with a mixture of Citadel, Vallejo and Army Painter paints. Let's have a look. Once it was primed black, I give it a go with the airbrush and Vallejo gunmetal. I also hit up all the metal parts of the crew. I then gave the buggy a full coat of Nuln Oil just to dull it down a bit. I then went over and started picking out several metal panels, pipes and other metallics I didn't want to be silver. They were painted with other metallic colours, and some of them just given a straight up coat of the brown contrast paints, as they can give some lovely effects. I painted the tyres black and gave them a dry brush of medium grey followed by a lighter grey, and started picking out other flat colours. I then used a bit of sponge and stippled on some rust and wear, generally starting with a chocolatey brown like Mornfang and working up to a orange like Riser Rust or even Troll Slayer Orange. More weathering and flat colours picked out, and any areas that hit with gold paint were then dulled down again with one or two shades of Nuln Oil. If you build it up towards the edges, you can get quite a good sooty effect. A few areas of checker pattern are picked out, and I do like this Vallejo blue-green, which I use as an accent colour on most of my models. Just use that to pick out some glyphs and some dags. I put it on neat, give it a dark blue wash, and then add a little bit of white to the Vallejo blue-green, just to do a little bit of edge highlighting on them. The red areas were also given a wash of Nuln, and around where the red met the metallics, I would pick it out in an orange. The odd panel was picked out in yellow, given a wash of Reikland Flesh, then edge highlighted with a brighter yellow. Don't forget to paint those boots. The sippy cup at the back may have been given a crude paint job, but I'm loving it. The fluffy dice were painted pink, as if they were going to be anything else. Then it was time to start on the crew. Flesh was a base coat of War Flesh, then given a Bealtan green wash. then built up with Warboss Green and Skarsnik Green, followed by eventual highlights with Krieg Khaki. In some cases, the Vallejo alternatives were used. The lenses on the goggles of the gunner and driver were painted blue and given a lens effect by going lighter shades to the bottom right and then a pure white dot in the top left of each lens. There we go, almost finished. Just one final thing to do before I stick the roll bars in, and that's get that grot finished. So there you go, still fits on the base. The base I did the way I normally do bases. There's a video on that over at the Drunken Ork YouTube channel if you want to check it out. I put a great big bit of slate on the base as well, so the buggy will be up on two wheels a little bit more dynamically than normal. I think the buggy looks quite different to the original Rukkatrukk Squigbuggy kit, and altogether I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. And I think it deserves a bit of a montage. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and thanks very much for watching. Take care now, bye bye.